republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of prayer. Thank you.
Alderman Wadawa,
Here.
Alderwoman Calderon,
Here.
Alderman Brickner,
Here.
Alderman Fire,
Here.
Alderman Damon,
Here.
Alderwoman Fliss.
Here.
Telephonic meeting, none.
And the meeting has been properly posted and noticed.
Public hearing,
Notice of public hearing on special assessments for public improvements, project number 2990-00-01, asphalt pavement, concrete curb and gutter, concrete sidewalk, grading, landscaping, and related work in South Kinnickinnick Avenue from East Lenham Avenue to East Howard Avenue. Please take notice that the Common Council of the City of St. Francis has declared its intention to exercise its power under Section 66.0703 Wisconsin statutes and under Chapter 10 of the St. Francis Municipal Code to levy special assessments for the installation of improvements within the following described assessment district. All that part of the northeast quarter section of Section 22, Town 6 North, Range 22 East, City of St. Francis, Milwaukee County, Wisconsin, bounded and described as follows. All those parcels that abut the right-of-way to South Kinnickinnick Avenue from East Lenham Avenue to East Howard Avenue.
is there anyone that would like to speak at this public hearing?
Do you want to have Hunter Lang review the project?
Sure.
plan?
Just come up here. Yes. No, you'll have your time for that one. Okay. Hunter Lang, would you like to add anything to what we just put out there?
Just to give you a brief summary, I guess, of the work. As you had mentioned, it's South Kinnickinnick Avenue resurfacing project. It's KK from Lenham Avenue to Howard Avenue. And the proposed project is milling off the top layers of old asphalt roadway and replacing with new asphalt. This will be done in 2 stages. So two-way traffic on KK is going to be maintained throughout the project. Also part of this project is spot repair of failed sidewalk, curb and gutter, and driveway aprons. Some of these costs, as mentioned, as well as restoration work, such as sod and seeding, will be assessed to the owners where applicable as defined in our special assessment policy. And part of this project, the city secured federal BIL funding, which is given us through the state. That means that the state is going to be in control of this project and managing this project. And this funding will pay for 80% of the anticipated project costs, meaning the city and its residents will effectively pay 20%. So that's a saving of roughly $650,000.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this public hearing? Public hearing is closed. Presentation, none. Citizens' comments. Tim Schultz, please. And then just state your name and your address, please.
Tim Schultz, 4022 South Kirkwood Avenue. I am bringing to the board here a petition for action for on the corner of my street, Kirkwood and Tesh, to make that intersection a 4-way stop. Traffic coming from Lake Drive to Packard is just obscene how traffic flies east and west, and especially now with the weather getting warmer. All the kids out on bikes, because like when they come down Kirkwood from the dead end street coming north, a lot of times they don't look for oncoming traffic, which I keep trying to embrace these kids to stop and look. Cars aren't going to stop and look for you. And I don't want to see my son or one of the other neighborhood kids get hit or killed. Traffic is just flies down that street, especially in the morning when people leaving for work, when they think no one's out. I got one guy up the street from us, I swear to God, he must think that is the on-ramp to the freeway. It's to the board, to Packard, and slam on the brakes. And there's numerous people that I get out and yell at. My son does. I just go yell at that car. Tell him to slow down. So here's my petition. I spoke my piece.
And what I was looking at right now, I didn't mean to be disrespectful. We got tons of them that are gonna be tonight voted on.
Okay.
And I was looking to see if your street was in there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the intersection again was, sir?
Tesh and Kirkwood.
Thank you. Moving on. Consent agenda. Is there any alderperson that would like anything removed?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Recommendation of action from committees, commissions, and boards. Actions to be taken from the licensing committee? None. Action to be taken from the finance committee? None. Action to be taken from the bargaining committee? None. Action to be taken from the Board of Public Works. Placement of stop signs, Kingan and Tesh, Waterford, Barlin. Mark or Hunter Lane?
It's, oh, sorry, it's later on the agenda for the ordinance. The Board of Public Works recommendation was to place stop signs at both Kingan and Tesh and Waterford and Barlin as four-way stops.
Need a motion on that one?
Was there, I don't know, if there wasn't a written, so you could just acknowledge you can acknowledge the recommendation for the Board of Public Works. There's nothing to place on file because it's not in writing, so there's no action needed.
Okay,
The action is the ordinance.
gotcha.
Okay, Mayor, we do have one other item for Board of Public Works. Board of Public Works recommends the city staff work with We Energies to prepare easements for the properties located at 1616 to 1630 East Layton Avenue for presentation to the Common Council.
Second.
Any further discussion?
You want to elaborate, Mark?
We Energies is adding utilities in along Layton Avenue on our Brusque property, across from the airport. And because the current right-of-way is filled full of utilities, they want to move it back behind the sidewalk and move 5 feet into the property line in order to place another power line. And so the utility, they're requesting a utility easement about 5 feet back into our property. And so the Board of Public Works reviewed that, and We Energies provided us with utility easements. There's actually 3 parcels we own along there. And so the recommendation of the Board of Public Works is to allow staff to work with We Energies for a utility easement and then bring it back before the Common Council.
It needs to go to Planning Commission first.
Okay.
So the recommendation should be to forward the recommendation of the Board of Public Works to the Planning Commission for their recommendation.
Could you amend my motion to the Planning
Or to
Commission
Planning
instead of?
Commission?
Yep.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. That was it, Sean, right? From you? That's it. Thank you. Excuse me. Action to be taken from the Planning Commission? None. Resolutions and ordinances. An ordinance to repeal and recreate Section 715 of the City of St. Francis Code of Ordinances concerning the Celebrations Committee. Mark or
I'll
Paul?
move to introduce and adopt.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. An ordinance to repeal and recreate Section 435-2H of the City of St. Francis Code of Ordinances regulating overnight parking of certain heavy vehicles in residential areas.
I'll move to to introduce and adopt.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just, one question on that.
absolutely.
Was there some issues with some vehicles parked in places? or-
The current ordinance was written eons ago, and it basically identified heavy vehicles as a vehicle over 4,000 pounds. So most pickup trucks are over 4,000 pounds today. So Paul reviewed the ordinance, and we rewrote the definition of a heavy vehicle, commercial vehicle. So it's clear what would be defined as a heavy commercial vehicle versus a pickup truck that somebody might use for passenger.
So this also picks up elements from the zoning code, which also regulates overnight parking of certain vehicles. And so we wanted to try to reconcile the zoning code with the parking requirements and also provide clarification for police department personnel who are enforcing it, as well as the general public who needs to, understand what they can and cannot do as far as if they get a parking permit, so.
We had a white panel truck that was parked over on Tesh. They'd been parked there for at least 3 days through the snowstorm. Somebody complained. It was a drywall business that was using the vehicle. They were living in the apartments at Tesh, and they were parking their business vehicle on the street.
So, like the box truck?
A big white box truck, yeah. Well, if it's zoned residential, so it only affects, that would be classified as residential, so anything where it would be residential.
Right, so so the ordinance doesn't prohibit the parking overnight of the vehicle, it just, it restricts where it can be parked with respect to residential areas that are zoned residential, or the use is primarily residential.
All right, moving on.
So we have a motion.
There was,
So,
and it was seconded.
We need a vote. Yes. we need-
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. An ordinance to repeal and recreate Section 435-11 of the City of St. Francis Code of Ordinances, authorizing the placement of stop signs in the City of St. Francis.
I'll move to introduce and adopt.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just in light of the petition tonight, I'm looking through the list of, of streets, and just for my own clarification, it looks like South Hatley Avenue at Tesh is slated to get a stop sign, as well as South Kirkwood at Tesh. But to my reading, that would be on the streets that are going north-south, not Tesh Avenue itself. Is that correct?
I think it means that it's a two-way instead of a four-way, right, Mark?
So Paul basically rewrote the stop sign ordinance to divide four-way stops from two-way stops. But really, the only changes to the ordinance compared to our old ordinance was the two additional stop signs at Kingen and Tesh and Waterford and Barlin. So this request for a stop sign will have to go to the next Board of Public Works meeting for recommendation, and then we'd have to change the ordinance again if that's what the Board of Public Works and the county council.
Personally, I don't
recommend.
care if we put a stop sign at every intersection in this city.
Mark, does this include the changes we made a couple meetings back as well?
Yes,
From
yes.
December, yes.
Yes.
that was-
Thank you,
that was
thank you.
incorporated in that.
But I think the one that is listed on Kirkwood, Matt, the way is listed as just the two-way, and I think the gentleman is requesting a four-way.
I understand.
And I was a bit facetious, but I do, everybody that requests a stop sign, I believe, needs it, because they do fly. It makes no difference, they fly. And they fly on Denton because that's a clear shot from, Denton is a clear shot from KK to Pennsylvania. So they fly.
It's the same thing on Waterford, and people were asking why we wanted that there. Well, you turn off Kinnickinnick, the next stop is Lipton. And right on the corner of Barlin, there's a house that the front and the side of the house are, one is less than 10 feet from the road, and the front of the house is 10 or maybe a little bit more from the road. There's a lot of little children there. It's a blind spot when you come up to that stop sign. Traffic comes down that hill pretty quick. It's for safety.
But they can fly between the stop signs too. I'm sure all of us have noticed that, so. You know,
Yeah.
Understood.
Just
But
wanted
they
to-
can ticket them when they don't stop, and if they're going 25 and almost hit a kid, you can't ticket them for that. So it gives us a little more enforcement for our team.
Yeah, so thanks for the clarification. So we will definitely forward that to the Board of Public Works and get that looked at, but, you know, I guess that's all I have. I'll reserve my comments for later.
You seconded it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Discussion items with possible action. Cataloging the Lake Protestant Cemetery.
So we received a letter from the Wisconsin Historical Society that per state statute, they are going to be cataloging our cemetery, which is known as the Lake Protestant Cemetery here in St. Francis. It's basically a communication from the Wisconsin Historical Society. They have the ability to do this by state statute.
Correct. So essentially, what it does is gives us notice that they're intending to catalog the property. The cataloging puts restrictions on any changes, any disturbance of the existing grave sites. The notice gives us notice as well that we have the opportunity to contest their anticipated cataloging of the site, but essentially the hearing is with respect to, are there human remains there? So I can't recommend that we protest their actions in that regard. It does, the catalog will, essentially, as it says, create a catalog and provide notice in the future to any interested person as far as the remains, as far as any actions that may disturb the existing grave sites. I talked to Mark, the map, it does not include our right-of-way, so it should not, they have the ability to also reach out and essentially catalog lands adjacent to a grave site if they think it's needed to avoid disturbance. They did not include our right-of-way, which is a good thing. But they've, as indicated in the letter, they're saying that it will not impact our ability to maintain the site, but if we wanted to make any changes in the future, we have to give them notice. They would have to make a determination as to whether or not it was going to disturb the grave site before we would be able to proceed.
So policies just need to be placed on file?
Yes, I would say, yes, you just receive and place on file. There's, as I say, they give us notice of the ability to protest it, but there's no point.
Okay, I'll so move.
Do we have any requirement to reply to them?
No, it's, the process will essentially be automatic at this point. They will proceed and create their catalog as long as they don't hear back from us.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Powerline Trail Feasibility Study, TAP Grant Application.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This was before the Common Council May of last year. As you may recall, there was a request by the City of Milwaukee to apply for a TAP grant for a possible intermodal trail that would go from, it would start in West Allis and it would come all the way through St. Francis to connect to the Oak Leaf Trail. The grant, the person applying for the grant in the City of Milwaukee has requested that we confirm that the City of St. Francis supports working on a TAP grant for the possible construction or implementation of a intermodal trail from West Allis to St. Francis, through St. Francis to the Oak Leaf Trail. The cost to the City of St. Francis would be $10,000 is what they're requesting as our share of that. I just want to confirm that the Common Council still is approving or endorsing that concept of a intermodal trail from West Allis through St. Francis to the Oak Leaf Trail. They're attempting to look at the We Energies easements, but there's no guarantee that they would use the easements. It's likely that they would use existing transportation bridges in order to try and get bicycles or intermodal access into St. Francis in order to use those facilities. It's not likely they're going to build an additional $1 million bridge across 794. So I want the council to understand that once we start going down this path, it may be difficult to say no if they say we're going to identify a bike lane across the bridge for Howard Avenue, or we're going to identify a lane of traffic, bike lane along Howard Avenue. That might be part of the trail. At this point, we don't necessarily have to be part of the study. It's likely that they're going to apply for the grant without us. And if this grant is granted by the state of Wisconsin, it's likely we'll get to see what the recommendations are. I guess my fear is at this point, if we commit to signing on to this study and we pay the $10,000, I think the expectation is going to be that once implementation starts, that the city also endorses that. And I'm not sure that the city is going to support that. So I wanted to make sure that if we're going to move forward, that we're all in agreement that that's something that we want.
I think we should wait then, Mark, and like you say, because of the roadways, we don't know what's gonna be happening, and to put like a bike path on the top of the Lake Parkway, I don't know how that would work at all. That's hard to turn there, and that's a dangerous thing right now without a bike path, so
Well,
I think we
and-
should wait till we see where they plan to come through.
Right, whether they come through Milwaukee, or whether they come through here, or whether they come through on Layton, wherever it would be, it would have to somehow connect back to this We Energies property to try and get down to the Oak Leaf Trail.
Yeah, I think if I can interject real quick here, I think it's supposed to connect into No Joshing Trail, and they're trying to go down the We Energies power lines basically, and connect in, like Clement Avenue roughly. So as far as crossing over the freeway, I think this is all just a feasibility study. So whether that's a pedestrian bridge, or it's going down Bolivar, Whitnall, Layton, Howard, who knows? I think that's all part of this.
Yeah,
I think the city of Milwaukee can pay for their own feasibility study.
Well, and I think what Mark and Debbie, what you're both recommending is very much in line with everything we do in the city of St. Francis. You've got a plan for a development, you have a plan for a project, we need to see the plan. We don't go into anything blind, and we don't commit to anything blind. So I'm all for waiting to see what they have for a final project before we commit.
I like their idea, I just don't want to waste $10,000.
Yeah, I think the feasibility study and part of this grant, that would mean it would just stop at St. Francis. So that might give you where the project would end, but then we might be on the hook, or we could apply for a similar grant in the future if you wanted to wait. But we would be on the hook for 100% of our feasibility study, essentially. So there's some balance there.
So Hunter, are you saying that if we sign up for the feasibility study today, we have like the grant is covering it, but if we don't do it, eventually at some point in the future, there could be a trailhead that just stops at the city of St. Francis, and then we'd have to figure out what to do with it
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah, essentially, yes. So this would just be applying for. Yeah, so this would be essentially applying for a grant that would take 80% of the cost of the feasibility study. It's not necessarily signing up to do any construction work. It's just cost sharing for that feasibility study. So that's why it's 10 grand instead of 100 grand or something like that, because there's no construction implications as part of this.
So Mark, could we confirm that it's just the feasibility and there's no commitment beyond that at this point?
Well, I think the issue is I think Steve is right. They're not going to end it in St. Francis and expect us to come up with a feasibility study to continue it onto the Oak Leaf Trail. Either they're going to find an alternative, or they're going to include us in their grant and pay for it in order to make that determination. So I disagree that the city would be liable for a feasibility study if they ended at our city limits, because the state isn't going to grant the TAP grant if it doesn't if it doesn't meet the desired purpose. So I think either Milwaukee,
Mark,
city of Milwaukee is going to have to change how they get to the Oak Leaf Trail, whether they go through the city, whether they go through Bayview and get down to the Oak Leaf Trail that way, or they're going to include us in as part of that study. But at this point in time, my fear is that if we commit to the study at this point, that they're going to feel that the city of St. Francis is committed to moving forward with an intermodal trail, and I'm not sure that we are until we actually see that study.
Mark, I feel like the opposite is more likely true, where if we don't sign on to the study today, then we will signal that we're not interested in doing something like this in the future. And I think with the amount of green space that we have through our communities, the number of avid bicyclists that we have through the community today, that I don't think that's a signal that we would necessarily want to spend or want to send to, to this study. That if we don't sign up for this today, you're right. It's more likely we will be excluded from future plans, and then we won't have the same ability to connect into the larger, kind of county level trail network that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to provide some clarification in that regard. So the matter was presented to the Planning Commission at its May 2022 meeting. And from the minutes of that meeting, it states as follows. City Engineer Dieskey stated that the April meeting, she had provided the commission with background about the project. It is an existing power line trail that utilizes former We Energies power and/or We Energies rail corridors to create a trail system through the area. This is a multimodal trail system. The concept is to extend it easterly to connect to the Oak Leaf Trail and the Neosho Trail, which would complete the east-west leg. The communities that are impacted by the extension are Milwaukee County and the cities of Milwaukee, West Dallas, Greenfield, and St. Francis. There is funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law for a study to find the best route for the trail expansion. The city of Milwaukee has offered to prepare an application for funding of the study necessary to determine the feasibility and routes for the extension of the trail. The study is an 80-20 split, with the state paying 80%. The 20% is split between the communities based upon the amount of trail in their community. St. Francis' share would be $10,000. Commissioner Lenz stated that the city should participate. Commissioner Beekle stated that the city should participate. A motion was made by Commissioner Kapczynski, seconded by Commissioner Nemiak, to participate in the study if funding is approved. Motion carried. So my recollection at the time was that the study the specific purpose was to extend to these two trails within our city. And as it's stated here, it's to find the best route. I don't necessarily read that to say that if we don't participate, that it would terminate, given the scope of the project is to find a way to extend to those specific trails.
The ultimate goal is to get to the lake.
Exactly.
What is the city of Milwaukee's cost in this, if ours is $10,000?
I don't think they identified that.
It wasn't given to it's not in the minutes, and it wasn't brought up at the meetings, and it's not in my notes. I'm sorry, I don't know that answer.
I don't know why they wouldn't let that information out.
It may be available, but again, I'm just reading out what we discussed back in May of last year when this came to the Planning Commission.
So is there any current information on it? I mean, to me, I think we need some updates or some other, more than, this is too hard to decide on that.
Last time, because there was no plan.
Yeah, I've printed out packets that kind of show roughly where they would like to be going, if you guys want to take a look at that. Or,
Can we hold it over to the next meeting and then decide, or talk,
sounds like
have
they're-
more information?
sounds like their deadline is really soon, and this just came to my knowledge like about a week and a half ago, something like that, so.
The email that we received, that Hunter received and I received, was from the city of Milwaukee. And so they're driving the trail study. And they need to apply. I think they needed to apply. They wanted an answer by last Friday, but we put it on the agenda. So I just want to make sure that if the council is still okay with the decision that was made last May, we'll move forward with it. If not, I want to make sure we're not giving false pretense to approve a trail at some point in the future from West Allis through St. Francis to the Oak Leaf Trail if that isn't the will of the council.
I think just because we know what Hunter just said about the trail, but like what you were saying, Mark, I think that's what's confusing everybody. Otherwise, I believe we should take part in this. And, I mean, because we do have bicyclists, we do have people going through, and I think we should be part of it. I'm just worried about where the trail's going, so I wish we had more details on it.
Well, if I may, so again, the study is with respect to finding the optimal methodology. At the end of the day, the city's streets, for example, are under the control of this body, not the consortium that's applying for the grant. And so no one's going to be able to say we're dropping a trail down East Howard Avenue without the council's approval. So if that helps with the concern.
Then I think we should take part in the study.
I move to participate in the power line feasibility study.
Second.
My only issue is that we don't know what the total cost of this study is. And I do think that we're going into it blind. Now, if we have to go in with, fine, that's not my issue. My issue isn't with the information we're gonna get out of it, or if we would be a part of it. My issue is that I think we're going into it blind. We don't know how much this study is costing for a total, and we're being asked to pay $10,000 because the city of Milwaukee said that we should pay $10,000.
It sounds like we are covered 80% of the, I think that with the grant application where the study's being covered by 80%, you're right, I don't know the specific splits between the various communities. And I think that maybe I could amend my motion so that we identify that as part of this. But I think ultimately, in order for us to be at the table where the decisions are being made or about bike paths in the city, which I think is, kind of certainly close to many of our residents' minds, that we should be active participants in this study.
I would agree, and there's no secret that we don't have bike lanes in St. Francis. Our streets aren't big enough for bike lanes in St. Francis, so we do need a place for them. But I do understand everybody's apprehension as well. But if we're not obligated to spend those highway dollars,
Unorthodox, but I think you bring something special to it.
Richard Adamczewski, 2513 East Van Norman. Phase 1 of the trail is complete. It goes roughly, the power lines that are on Clement, that's where it would enter St. Francis. So right now, the power lines roughly parallel Bolivar. And then when you get on the other side at 27th Street, it's Cold Spring. So as of now, Phase 1 from Cold Spring and 894 to 60th Street is complete. This Phase 2 is gonna be from 60th to 35th Street. And then that's where this project ends as of now. So they'd have to go from 35th and 27th, you get to 27th Street, you'd have to work out a deal with Brager, Ford, and Chevy, because the power lines cross. Brager, Ford, and Chevy is on We Energy's property, or vice versa, however that works. And then, once you get to 6th Street, you have 94, so they'd have to go to Howard, they'd have to find some way from 6th Street to come back to the power lines on 3rd, or they just continue down Howard, but this has been started already, and they're gonna start Phase 2 this year. Just to give you guys a little background on it.
Sean, you want to pass? We have some, that shows a little picture from Hunter that shows.
thank you, Richard.
That's just what Milwaukee sent us, so I didn't.
And it gives you a better idea of what you're looking at.
Thank you. There you go.
further discussions?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Appointments to committees, commissions, and boards? None. Bless you. Correspondence with possible action or referral? None. Unfinished business? None. Other business? None. Department heads? Amy, do you have anything for us?
I just wanted to mention that March 1st, all the libraries in the state are required to submit an annual report. In addition to that, we prepare a report for the community, so all of the council members and you, Mayor, and Mark should have received that in your mailboxes here at City Hall. And it's also posted on the library's website. So it includes some information that's not included in the state report and is a little bit more community friendly than just a bunch of statistics.
Thank you. Chief Hunter? Creature of habit.
Thank you.
I think that the Hunter thing didn't go unnoticed.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
You're a hunter sandwich.
Hunter sandwich. I can't unhear that one.
Oh, you can't. So moving on, the stop signs, I definitely, just my personal opinion, and I've had conversations with him on numerous occasions regarding the stop signs, and it was my recommendation to him, because he didn't feel like his voice was being heard, to maybe see if he can get a petition from his neighbors to see if that would help at all. So stop signs, they don't help. If anything, what that does is it provides our officers concrete evidence under 341.41 sub 1. And I do remember that because that was one of my favorite tickets to write because it was so easy to prove. But that they can then enforce it and hopefully slow these vehicles down. And yes, Alderwoman Fliss, they are going to then accelerate because they're going to be upset. However, we had a conversation similar to this at Maclea 2 months ago, because this is not a St. Francis problem with speeding. This is not, this is a Milwaukee County problem, and it happens everywhere in Milwaukee County. And until we can get the county on board with prosecuting these individuals when we are getting these reckless drivers, these juveniles that are repeat offenders, it's going to continue. So we can continue to cite and refer, but when they slap them on the wrist and say, send them back and write a local ticket, or we're just dismissing it, it doesn't help. So having these stop signs will definitely help our cause, and I look at it as a positive personally. Mark and I had a conversation because Paul, the custodian, came to me and told me that all the lights in our garage were out, except for maybe 4. I just thought that we normally leave them off during the day because there's no use having them on, and obviously working the day, I don't see that they're out. So when I went out and looked, they were actually out. So Diamond Electric came across with a $9,500 approximate
To
estimate.
replace all the light fixtures to LED.
Correct, to replace everything, the light fixtures and whatnot, to LED, and to me that made absolutely no sense at all to spend that kind of money when all we had to do is replace them. They're perfectly fine fixtures with what we had. So needless to say, the garage is nice and bright again, and it was nowhere near $9,000 plus to fix that.
They replaced 94 light bulbs.
There you go. So, and two,
How many attorneys does it take?
and 2 fans at no cost, I believe. And those fans, because the previous fans apparently were of 0 use, they did nothing in that garage. So they didn't actually rotate air. They did nothing except for collect dust. So now we actually have fans that rotate air, and so the garage is a happy place again. Our new officer, Kayla Culberson, is moving along very well. She, I just had firearms today with her, and she's going to be a tremendous asset to this community. Lastly, well, I also want to say thank you to the mayor and to the South Shore Chamber of Commerce and for Mark for showing up at the Chamber of Commerce. They asked me to speak. They didn't tell me what to speak on. They said it was going to be a question and answer, and then I showed up and they said you have 30 minutes to give your speech on whatever it is that you came to speak about. And so needless to say, I spoke for 35 minutes, and it was nice to get to meet a lot of people that are our stakeholders and that have interest in our communities. And we also got a lot of people to sign up for National Night Out from outside of our city, which is a positive thing. Lastly, our clerks, they should be done by April 1st. We're hoping with training. Again, one's bilingual in Spanish, which is going to be just extraordinary because we can also use her for translation, and then one's fluent with sign language. And as soon as they are done, we'll then move our hours, and I'll let you all know at that point and let the citizens know that our hours will be retroactive back to what they were prior, closing at 10 o'clock on the weekdays and 8 p.m. on the weekends. And with that, I pass. A lot. Yeah, so basically, without getting into too much detail, mental health and law enforcement, what it's like as a survivor of certain tragedies, what people see and what they can't unsee, and how that overflows not only from police but into fire, but also into into banking, into owning a business. It doesn't matter, it's there, and just the warning signs and what to look for. And to me, I'm very passionate about that because I had my own experience back in the day when the leadership at that time really could care less about how you felt. It was, you went through this person died in your arms, or as a result of your actions, move on. And that's it. They didn't offer you any help, anything else. So now there's, obviously, my approach is different. Leadership in law enforcement is different. And we are now, and the state legislature, as a matter of fact, passed a law that now recognizes PTS. I don't call it PTSD because I don't think it's a disorder. I think it's something that we live with, and it's something that I think you get your body checked every year or once a year for a health. You should get your mind checked too. It's just something that we should all do. And went from that to businesses having cameras and the importance of that, and how we have an ordinance and many jurisdictions do not regarding businesses having cameras, because we solve a lot of crimes based on that. So our detective bureau is knocking it out of the park with solving fraud crimes. We had a search warrant on Monday at 4200 on the lake. I wanted to leave with that because there was a presence there of law enforcement. We had a very dangerous individual that was living there under false pretense, as his mother used fraudulent information to rent the $2,195 one-bedroom apartment for this young individual who was a heroin and fentanyl dealer and possessed a lot of firearms as well. And there will be other search warrants and whatnot coming down the path as a result of that outside of the city, but that was inside of our city at 4200 on the lake. So he will be gone. He's already received a 5-day, and because it was a fraudulent application, it's null and void anyway. So that's one less individual that we have to worry about in our city that's carrying a firearm. And with that, I pass.
I'll be very brief. I'll be briefer than that. So we're into the third full week of our paramedic program, and it's going beyond what we expected. So our citizens are getting the ALS service minutes quicker than what we had been before putting it into service. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's very important. Next thing is on Saturday, April 1st, the Milwaukee Admirals is presenting, I don't even know if it's the 5th annual or 6th annual Battle of the Badges, Police versus Fire. And not a lot of people know this, but HEO Cale Durstein, one of our heavy equipment operators, is a hockey player, been playing for decades. He is on the varsity squad. He played earlier this year. He's been playing hockey forever. But he's on the varsity squad for the fire team, so we'll be down there supporting him. But they start at 12:30 and 2 o'clock are the games. You get 2 hockey games, police versus fire. So we have the trophy sitting down in because they won last year. So we have the trophy right in our lobby as we speak. So that's a plug for that. And then just a quick reminder that we're going to be once again hosting the Honor Guard Clinic and School event the week of April 17th. So we'll get closer. I'll give more info at our next council meeting. But we are once again hosting. Every single class session is filled to the brim, and I think we're somewhere around 21 different states, and I don't know how many entities, but they're coming this way again this year. So, and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Chief. Hunter Lang?
Give an update on just engineering or? Okay, perfect. Well, as of a couple weeks ago, it's just me now. So just kind of one-man army. I've been working with Mark to try to, scramble, figure things out and pivot and ultimately just try to stay above water, I guess. Yeah, coming up we have the 2023 KK project and a bunch of other odds and ends.
Today was the first day of in-person absentee voting, and we had almost 50 people, which is quite a lot for the first day of in-person absentee. It'll run weekdays through next Friday, the 31st. We will accept people until 5 p.m., although we are posted till 4:45 and 5 p.m. on the 31st only. Of course, the election day will be 4/4, Tuesday, the 4th of April. And that's all I have this evening, Mayor.
Thank you very, very much. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. We do have a couple of real estate closings for TID 4 scheduled for before the end of the month that we'll be working on, and otherwise would just like to join in urging all of our residents to get out and vote for this spring election. And with that, I pass.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you, Mayor. Monday is the deadline for the engineering RFP, and the city received $40,000 for 2023 allocation from Milwaukee County Community Development Block Grant for the compliance officer. Mike will start again as of April 1st. He had a knee replacement done, so he will be back with us shortly. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just want to welcome Hunter. Thanks for joining us today. And I see they put you in the hot seat right next to us. But yeah, welcome. And I think Chief Hunter, it might be worthwhile to see if you can station a squad or something on that street corner until we can kind of take action with the Board of Public Works on the four-way stop, and maybe that can help out a little bit in the short term. And that's all I have, so with that I pass.
I'll pass this evening, sir.
I will pass also this evening, Mayor.
Thank you. Debbie?
I'll pass, Mr. Mayor.
Sarah?
I will pass as well.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Sean?
First, I want to acknowledge somebody who doesn't usually toot her own horn, but if you get a chance to read the library's state report, throughout the pandemic, one of the things Amy and her team has done is still engage the community with our programming. And the programming hasn't dropped off. You've kept these kids engaged. They're reading, they're in their programs, and that's very commendable in these trying times. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. The other, Chiefs, you're always wonderful. I'm just going to skip that. Tonight was nice. We talk about development. We talk about how we're going to raise money, how we're going to do things. Tonight we focused on the safety of this community. We're talking about road safety, children, stops. I know stop signs don't fix everything, but we're talking about the children in our community and our elderly. It is an aging community. I had somebody ask me if we can slow down the light exchange on Layton Avenue. Unfortunately, we don't control that. Cudahy does. But we also are looking at...
I told you that in confidence, Sean.
But yeah, we're also looking at making our green space more accessible for our community. So I appreciated our discussion tonight as a council, but I really appreciated that we are focused on something else for the community other than development, and I appreciated that this evening, and on that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Sean. I would just like to say thank you to the TPW. Awesome job. Not only do you plow snow, you pick up trees and branches. You guys did an awesome job, and I'd just like to say thank you. And with that,
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. We are closed.